Welcome back to Advocacy in Motion. If you've seen the program before, you know that we are about giving a vision and a voice to nonprofit organizations and to individuals making an impact in our community. And before I introduce my guest today, I want to say, you'll notice a little something different on our sign back there. We were presented by Niagara. They have come on board as a presenting sponsor. And they've also going to be a presenting sponsor for us in the coming year. So that gives us an opportunity to talk about even more nonprofit organizations and individuals. And if you're not familiar with Niagara, then you may know that they are the leading manufacturer of water-conserving plumbing products, including their new Stealth toilets, which save up to 60% of water, which means 60% of cost. And that's important for everybody. But it's really important to the nonprofit organizations they work with, the affordable housing units, and multi-unit construction, because saving 60% of water and cost for a nonprofit organization can go a long way towards other uses. So thank you for Niagara for coming on board and for staying with us and allowing us to continue what we're doing here. My guest today is an old friend. Her name is Ranson, and she does a lot of things. I have here in my notes that she is a strategic planning expert, master team facilitator, and accomplished speaker, a teacher, and a guide to support personal and professional growth. Welcome, Ann. Tell us what you're doing.
Well, good morning, Tommy. It's so nice to be with you and to see you again.
It is.
So yes, I do a lot of things, although I am trying to continue to narrow my focus a little bit. Really, I think my theme in life is about seeing possibilities. And so I help people see possibilities through individual coaching, through the transformation game, and with organizations. That's all really strategic planning is what is my vision for the future and how am I going to get there?
That's terrific. I noticed when I was doing some research and looking at your website and some things, there are so many facets to what you are doing in coaching and teaching, working with organizations, with individuals. What is something that you really like to narrow in on? What is your first focus when you're speaking?
Well, very recently, over the last really couple of months, and you wouldn't have even seen it on my website because it hadn't made it there yet. But I think there is a call and a need in society for more hope.
Okay.
And again, it's about seeing possibilities. It's about strategic. When you do strategic planning, you're hoping you're going to get to this vision in 10 years or 20 years or at some point in the future. But what I'm hearing from a lot of clients and from the studying that I do is that people feel hopeless. Things are so divisive. Things are so confusing. The economy, whatever the things are that affect a person individually, they feel, I'm going to repeat it, they feel a little hopeless. And so part of my speaking in the future is going to be infused with this idea of hope, and that I'm a very hopeful person. So it's easy for me to be hopeful and to see all the good that's going on in the world. Now, that's not to say there aren't things I don't like going on, because there's more than one or two of those.
Very true. Yeah.
But I counterbalance the negativity that's inbound with a generally hopeful attitude. I could say more, but I don't know.
Well, no, I would like to hear more, because what you're saying is absolutely correct. I mean, we need hope, and there should be hope. Sometimes we just get burdened by everyday life and everyday problems that just overwhelm us. Is there something just you key on that just, push for that hope? How can we do that? How can you help us?
Well, I tell you something that I think is incredibly simple, but it's not always easy. And that is to notice what's going on around us. Because there is something called reticular activation, and it's this principle that when we look for something, we find it. My favorite example is when a woman is pregnant, it appears to her that every woman in America is pregnant. Or you think, okay, well, I'm going to buy a new car. I'm thinking about one of those Volkswagen Beetles. Then that's the only car you see. So it is some scientific, I'm not a scientist, but it's some scientific thing that if you say, like one of my practices is I sit and if I'm in the living room and I'm about to watch TV, I'll look out the patio door and I'll see the squirrels playing, or I'll feel the breeze on my skin if I walk outside. It's these simple little things that bring me hope, because the world is working just fine on one level. Okay. It's on the human level where we fall short.
Okay, and that affects all of us at some point in time, and it's good to have hope and to be able to reach that and just to realize it, that it's out there, because we do live in rather chaotic times, and I think one of the things that you do talk about is that we are in a very chaotic world, and that you see through the chaos and you teach people how to get through that. How do you balance that? How do you do that?
Well, it's a gift, first of all, that I'm able to do that. And it was confirmed to me. I've always done it. I didn't know I did it until I got involved with Clifton Strengths, now known as Gallup Strengths, which most people who are familiar with the strengths psychology might be familiar with strengths finders. So when I had my strengths done, I found out my top 5 strengths are in this order: empathy, connectedness, strategic, maximizer, and relator. So strategic is all about seeing the end game and then just naturally being able to see through all of the different options to the clearest path forward. So it helps me greatly, of course, in my strategic planning work, because if there's 6 options that a nonprofit may be considering for their future, I'm able to help them see through, out of these 6, there's really only a couple that are going to provide the most impact towards your mission, that are going to serve your clientele or your patients, whatever the case may be. And so that strength that I just was born with is what helps facilitate that.
Okay, that's interesting. And as you know, part of our whole being on this show is to work with nonprofit organizations and to recognize them and individuals. I know that's a major part of what you're doing. Talk a little bit about that. How can you help us talk to nonprofits and see if we can put a little motion behind the work?
Well, first, I want to commend you for this program, because causes need outlets. And I think most people down deep inside care about some issue. It could be nature, it could be poverty, whatever that is, that, you see a commercial, it's like those Sarah McLachlan commercials that used to run. I used to have to turn it off. It's like, oh my gosh, yes. I just can't stand it. It was just too much. But find something that touches your heart and your soul, and then give to that, whether it's money, the old expression, time, talents, and treasures, I believe is what it's called. Because the nonprofit community is thriving despite, certainly they've been hit hard like all businesses. And make no mistake, a nonprofit is a business.
Right.
It just does not throw off dollars to shareholders.
It has to sustain itself.
And unfortunately, there are some practices in the world of nonprofits that actually inhibit their ability to have more impact, which I can say more about, or...
Well, it's go on with that, because if you can give some advice to nonprofits to avoid pitfalls, or to be more successful. I think that'd be important for them to know.
Okay. Well, and unfortunately, some of it is not in the control of the nonprofit. It's in the control of the funders and the donors. And there's something, Dan Pallotta, who's, I think he's up in the Northeast somewhere, has written some books. I've seen him speak at the Social Enterprise Alliance, and he calls it the starvation cycle. And what it has to do with is we are asking nonprofits to solve some of the most entrenched, difficult problems in our society, and yet we tie one hand behind their back. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, so when when many funders give money, they earmark it that it has to be spent on programs, which is wonderful. Right. Because whatever the nonprofit is, the program is what they're doing to serve their community. But they need administration, they need technology, they need strategic planning, they need to pay people who have the education or the experience or the intelligence to really solve these big problems. But instead, we say, no, it can only go for programs, or the funders often have that requirement, which means they aren't able to pay competitive wages, and yet they're trying to solve the biggest problems in the world.
Very true.
And so that's this starvation cycle. And over time, an organization cannot stay competitive and have impact if they don't invest in their technology and their people and so on.
Okay. Well, that's, I know we, I said, have many nonprofits on the show here, and we're reaching out to some. And the same thing. It's exactly what you're saying. Everybody's trying to do what their mission is, and avoiding all the burdens that kind of slow them down from doing that. And that, I think, and what you said about people getting involved, and we talk about that here too, about whether it's your church or an organization, whatever it might be, to get involved and not just watch the parade go by and wave, just get in and help and do what you can do. And I think that's great. And I think that's a lot of the fun that we're having here, of being able to get that message out a little bit.
Well, and if I can, let's tie that back to hope.
Okay.
Because I believe, and it's been my experience, that when people get involved in a cause, they end up more hopeful because they see people doing work on the ground that's making a difference. And so maybe a little of their cynicism or their skepticism can ease a little bit because they see the good work that's going on. So not only does it, feel good in our heart and soul to make a difference and to serve in some way, it also bolsters you because of what you see around you.
Oh, you're exactly right. And I want to get into it a little bit. You and I come back from a similar business background in the media business, in the radio business, which is very, very practical, very hardcore. And I'll come back to it in just a minute. But when I come back, I want to kind of ask what you think, how that background that you've had in the real world, as we call it, or I have, is influencing how that helps in your message today. But first, I want to recognize family. My daughter and her mother own a little gift shop in downtown Richardson, in the newly renovated downtown Richardson, called Piranha Haven. And you may know Piranha is Sanskrit for energy, life force. And that's what you find there. It's just this great, wonderful shop there with all kinds of local artwork, merchandise from free trade villages, which is very special, all kinds of the crystals and sage and that sort of thing. And they also have a psychic fair at the fourth Saturday of every month, and they're located at 107 South McKinney in downtown Richardson. And you can go on their website at piranhahaven.com, and you can see the list of the psychic readers they have there that you can engage with them, or attend the psychic fairs at the end of the month. But Piranha Haven, and if you go in, say hello. If you see Alex, tell her Dad said hi. So we want to thank them so much for being a sponsor of ours and helping us reach out, because they do a lot in the community as well. So thank you. Thanks to the family.
Absolutely.
I mentioned our radio background. like I said, that's the real world of sales. I was in sales and marketing, and how does that? What do you think that leads to now? How does that affect us in what we're doing now?
I think that's such a thoughtful question, Tommy. I've come to believe that this is the real world. That wasn't.
Okay.
I think is part of it because, first of all, had a fabulous career in radio, loved it, was successful, met fabulous people like you. But it's also, it's a tough cookie. You know, we worked hard. We worked really hard. We played hard. So it was fun in that regard. I'm a total spoiled brat now. It's like when I don't have blue parking passes on the front row at Texas Stadium. It's like, what is this? What do you mean I have to take a shuttle bus to get to the stadium? And of course, that stadium doesn't exist anymore. But I think what it did actually was it gave me a very solid business foundation because, as you know, you work with all kinds of businesses. And so you learn a little bit about retail. You learn a little bit about professional services. In my later years in radio, I did a lot of work in the automotive industry with General Motors and Lincoln Mercury and working with brand managers and really was able to learn what marketing is as opposed to radio or just advertising. Because when I started in radio, somebody had commercials they wanted to buy, and I was just going to submit a proposal or I was going to try to convince them that they should buy radio. But as my career advanced, and I got into management, into other aspects of it, the marketing piece, and that has served me incredibly well, not only with my clients, but for me personally in building my own business.
That's terrific. A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of having Jill Cumnock on the show. She is CEO of Ronald McDonald House. Mm-hmm. And her husband, Chris, who I worked with for years, he is now CEO of Wipe Out Kids Cancer. And as she put it, she said, Chris is finally coming over to the bright side of nonprofit, which is really, you can see the people we work with that just have that spirit about them, that's something special for working with nonprofit organizations and the good work they're doing. So you're exactly right. So leave the real world behind and come over to the bright side.
Well, you know, and what caused me to leave radio was a deep desire to make a difference. And I finally came to a certain point where helping, at that time, Pontiac, you know, sell one more car was not going to make the world a better place. It was going to give them more profit, and they were wonderful to work with. I'm not criticizing them, but it just didn't feed my soul the way my work does now. That's
terrific, and it's good. I hear that from all my guests here. It's so much fun to be doing this. There's something that I noticed on your website, and you have posted many, many times, and it's complicated, and I want you to talk about it because it's very important. It's called the transition game.
Transformation.
The transformation game. And you discovered this years ago in Scotland, I believe, and it's been something that you're really focused on, has really been helpful. And can you kind of tell us a little bit about that and how people can get involved with that?
Yes, thank you. Well, it is a board game. I mean, it plays like Monopoly, except instead of landing on Park Place or Baltic Avenue, you land on an Angel Square or an Insight Square, an Appreciation Square. I was introduced to it actually by my spiritual teacher in, I guess, the late 80s is when it came out. And she got it and we played and it was fantastic. And then I didn't see it again for a number of years and actually played it, I think, in the late 90s with a facilitator. And it was a 3-day game. So just to give you a sense of it is, it's a game that shows you what you believe. And so that sounds kind of weird because you think, well, I think I know what I believe. But Actually, most of us don't know what we believe because we're on the treadmill, and we get up and we go to work and we do what we do, and then we come home and then we get up and, then we do the whole thing again. The transformation game, you start by setting an intention. And probably the intention that I set that has had the most impact in my life was in 2016. I was in really, really bad financial condition. And I set my intention that I live life with joy and ease. Now, there was nothing in the earth plane in my life that was joyful or easy at that point. And I can't tell you exactly where I landed and what the insights were that I gained from the game, except that after the game was over and as I continued to process what I had learned in playing the game, I decided to fly to Scotland and take their training. And I'd been trying to do it several times. They don't offer it very often. The woman who created the game at that time was living in North Carolina, but I had never been able to connect when she had a training. So I decided to bite the bullet. Now, okay, so some of you may be thinking, okay, so you're in financial condition and now you're going to fly to Scotland and take a training. And so I did a crowdfunding campaign, which I had never done before. It was quite a lesson for my ego to be, to put out there, I need help, because I've, kind of got this persona of, I'm in control, everything's fine, it's all good. But it was life-changing. And it kind of began the journey of me not letting go of my business expertise or my business interests, but moving more and more towards that we're spiritual beings having an earth experience.
Okay.
We're not
nice.
earth people that occasionally has a spiritual experience. And whether we're conscious of it, we're still spiritual beings. And,
right.
The words I use, God creates us all. And so people who play the game, and I usually facilitate a game every couple of months, only 4 people can play. I send instructions and help people establish their intention. I have created a 1-day version. It's a 5-hour game because I haven't found many people who are yet willing to play a 3-day version. I think the key thing about the game is there's 4 levels. You're born onto the physical level and you move your token around and you do what the things say as you land on the different squares. And you take in these messages from the game through the lens of your intention. So, for an example, I live life with joy and ease. So what the game showed me was both where that was true in my life and where it wasn't true. And then you got something to work with because you say, oh, okay, so I have a fear about not having money, as an example. I'm not sure that particular phrase came up in that way, but then you know what you have to work with. So you're on the physical level, you accomplish certain markers, I guess. Then you move to the emotional level, then you move to the mental level, and then the last level is the spiritual level. And when you are pain-free, and there's a square that's called setbacks, there's pain in the game. There are people, there's a group we've been playing for 10 years on Good Friday. I facilitate, but I play also. And we've been playing, as I say, for about 10 years. And in the beginning, when one of us would get a bunch of setbacks or a bunch of pain, it'd be like, oh man, what a bummer, we'd go through the whole thing. And now we say, yay, bring it on. This is just information. It's guiding me to an area that I need to look at. And I'm a person who believes that reflection is one of the most undervalued activities. I spend a lot of time in contemplation and reflection. It's one of the ways I stay hopeful because I'm not, yes, I watch the news. I'm a bit of a news junkie. I love politics and all those kind of things, but I have to balance that with my time of reflection and things like the transformation game to remind me there's a higher truth than what we see on the TV every day.
Now you're using the term game, board game. It's not a game. It's as you've stated, it's a journey and a personal journey. It's not Monopoly. It's much more than that, of revealing things of yourself and your goals and whatever. And I think, is that correct? Is that a correct statement?
And it gives you, on my website, there's a phrase about something about having powerful breakthroughs. And that copy came from testimonials that I get from people who played the game. That's what people get. There was one woman, we were 10 minutes into the game, and whatever her turn was, she had a major breakthrough. It was like, oh my God, I never realized that that's what was underneath what was going on in this area of my life. And that is commonplace. Now, sometimes the breakthroughs don't happen till after the game is over and you've had a chance to go home and look at your notes or reflect on it. And then you go, oh my gosh, that's what that's about.
Okay, very interesting. Now, I know I urge people to go to your website, which is what's your website?
AnnRanson.com. All N's is in Nancy.
Okay. There is so much in that website. All the things that you do, your various levels of your nonprofit organizations, the transformation game. There's a lot of experience there. And people can actually order that game. Is that correct?
Yes.
You can actually, it's something physical that you can buy.
They can either buy the board game, they can register for one of the games that I facilitate. I think the next game is in February. I do have a transformation game themed workshop on December the 30th. And we're going to close out this year with a burning bowl activity and do some vision board for next year, and then use some of the cards from the transformation game to help us. I'm into depth.
Okay.
I think that's where I'm going to use the word the juice is. That's where the real meaning, at least for me, in life is. It's when I dig deep within myself. And so we're going to do some activities to help us get in touch with, what's really going on with me. What do I want to leave behind that happened this year? Or maybe it's just, in my family, it seems like everybody is clearing clutter, and it's hysterical because I'll go on and say, okay, well, I'm getting rid of, these sets of dishes. Does anybody want them? And everybody says no. And then a week later, I get something from my brother. Okay, I was going through and I'm clearing out books. Does anybody want these books? And none of us wants any of this stuff because we're all trying to clear things out. So what do you want to clear out? Because we have to clear space to make room for something new.
Very good. I really like that. What's new for, what do you see coming up in the next year? What's new for you, and what's new for your vision? And what would you like to talk about coming up?
Well, let's see. Am I really going to say this out loud in front of somebody else? So I guess writing is in my future.
Okay.
I have been a member of the Hay House Writers community. I guess this is my third year. I have yet to write a chapter. But I have things to say that I think people could benefit from. And originally it was going to be something more businessy, something more like strategy. And but I've decided to go more towards spiritual truths and how different spiritual truths have brought me through my most difficult times. And we all have difficult times. And I've just learned some principles that help me greatly on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's probably what I'm going to be writing about. And I can't believe I'm saying this on the air.
And now you're committed to it.
Yes, I guess I am, Tommy. Oh, my gosh.
I notice here that, you work with individuals nonprofit organizations, groups. I know you do motivational speaking, and they obviously people can get in touch with you through your website, annranson.com. Do you have any advice? I want to go back to the nonprofits a little bit because that's kind of where we are here. What would be your thoughts of advice to nonprofits in the coming year? What do you see coming, or would you see something that can help them move forward?
Well, I mean, I think something all of us need to do is stay out of the fear that, it seems as if my beloved media, who has greatly blessed my life, has just gone crazy feeding us a diet of fear. And I think it's very difficult to stay out of that. And so part of it is to insulate yourself somehow from the fear, and don't buy into every fear-mongering message that's being tossed at us. And that's not always easy because it's so ubiquitous. If people consume any kind of media, whether it's social media, traditional media, or whatever it may be. Another thing that I think is really important is to get back to basics. To really, what is our mission? What is our vision? And what are we really trying to accomplish? What do we really have the capacity to accomplish? I was working with a nonprofit on their plan quite recently, and they have a very big vision, and I applaud having a big vision. But strategy is all about how do you get there. And so if people don't have a strategic plan, I mean, you can certainly hire me, but I mean, you can go online and you can find one-page templates for a strategic plan. It doesn't give you all the whistles and bells as if you do a full-blown strategic plan, but find money in the budget to take care of some of those basic things like administration. Again, this same organization is woefully understaffed. And so it becomes even harder to get out of the, that vicious cycle, if you will, when they don't have the manpower. That's why volunteers and board members, I have served on dozens of boards over the years, and I find it to be such a gratifying experience. So recruit well, use some kind of a diversity matrix to figure out, do I need a doctor? Do I need a lawyer? Do I need an accountant? Do we need gender diversity? Do we need ethnic diversity? Because the research shows that the more diverse, whether it's your workplace or your board, the more diverse, the more successful, because we all come with different ideas.
Very good. And you're talking about strategic planning, whatever, but we're in a time of the year now of New Year's resolutions, and what you're saying are New Year's resolutions. In a more common term.
Yeah.
But to have a plan for the next year, to sit down, analyze yourself, analyze where you are now, what we're doing now, and how it can be better. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, just try and make it better. So, well, I want to thank you so much for being here today and being a great guest, and so much information, and there's so much more to be found on your website, annranson.com, again. As far as what you're doing and how you can help so many people, and we appreciate that. And I just want to end up and say again just how much I appreciate our friends at Niagara for coming on board and letting us visit with people like you and giving us the opportunity, and for our friends over at Piranha Haven for being with us all these years, all these months. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and let's make next year better.
I love it. This is great. Thank you so much for inviting me, Tommy.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to have you.